Welcome to the Wordy Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Wordy Pair Podcast. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I am your interlocutor who refers to oneself with the perpendicular pronoun, Justin.
And in the fullness of time, we've decided to talk a little bit today about a very
wordy pair?
No?
This makes perfect sense.
I guess technically you're right. Yeah, okay. So there's a sitcom in Britain in the 1980s called Yes, Minister. And we're going to talk a little bit about the first season in particular, but kind of the show in general. And we'll see where that goes. So, a little bit of history. I didn't know about this show until you showed it to me. Show. And...
Showed the show.
Show the show. No, but, like...
Shogunai.
I think you showed me a couple of episodes, and, like, my reaction to it was, this show causes the most soul pain of any show that I've ever watched.
It was an appropriate reaction, but nonetheless, it's an amazing show.
It is a very good show. Like, I like it very much, and it's got a lot of very witty writing and a lot of interesting characters and a lot of good plot points and turnarounds and all that good stuff. But at the same time, it shows how bad bureaucratic governments are in 1980. It hits that
nerve.
Yeah, and well, it's 45 years later now.
Not just in 1980, but that's one of the things that makes this show so great is how timeless it is.
I mean, yes and no. Everything's probably much worse now.
Yeah, but the methodology employed by the bureaucracy is largely the same methodology we see today. So this show is littered with jokes about how government works, except you're watching it knowing that this is exactly how it does work, and it kind of that's where the soul pain comes in. Like Rudy is not saying that this show is painful per se to watch because of it being a show that's painful. He is saying that it is soul pain because this is a reflection of reality that is painful to think about.
To admit to, yes.
Yeah, to admit to.
It is
And I believe when I first showed it to you,
yeah,
you said that it was a case in point as an example of the banality of evil.
Yes. It is very much about the banality of evil.
And worse than that, I find myself
not just banality, but also like inevitability.
Yeah.
If you watch this show with any perspective that the way that things happen in this show are like the way that they happen in reality, you can lose all hope in just a few episodes. And
I wish you were lying.
I
wish you were joking.
Very much the truth. I wish I was joking. But, yeah. The show is joking, but the show is also not quite ripped from the headlines, but according to the stuff I've read about it, the writers would often write an episode, and then they would go talk to their inside sources, and their inside sources would have things that were much funnier than the things they had written for the purpose of the show. And so they would rewrite the show using actual things that actually happened.
Yeah, they had a lot of good insight to the way the civil service worked in jolly old England, and
Yes.
they employed a lot of that knowledge in writing the scripts.
Well, not just that, they had inside sources. They would talk to people who were actually in government and say, okay, here's our script. And they would say, oh, that's good, but, this happened the other day. And they'd be like, yeah, that's actually better. Sad face.
Yeah. All right, so this is a show about a minister named Jim Hacker. The show begins, the pilot episode, with him becoming this new minister, sitting around the phone, waiting for a phone call to find out what job he's getting, what minister he's going to be. And he ends up as the Minister for Administrative Affairs, which is just... That's the tip of the iceberg on where these titles and meanings for everything start to turn into these fantastic word salads that are...
Yes.
I almost said tossed about. You know what? I'm saying it. Tossed about by the civil service in order to enact things that they want to happen but aren't necessarily the will of the minister himself.
Right.
He is a man at odds with the civil service, but he is also a man with shortfallings of his own that cause him to play into the hands of the civil service constantly.
Yeah. Constant. And the worst parts are the times when he's not at odds with the civil service and when they have to work together to do something. And your mouth just kind of, your jaw just kind of drops open in horror, and and you see an elevator door open and a cascading tide of blood come out of it. And then you realize that you're watching the wrong movie, and you go back to watching Yes, Minister, and it's funny, but you still have that gaping horror face thing going on.
Yes, so let's maybe do you want to tackle a bit of what happened in the first episode? Like, not a synopsis, but like some of the things that...
Okay, so the first thing that we establish in this show is that Jim Hacker is a member of... They never talk really about like actual parties. They always use words like the government or the opposition. And so it's very much the kind of thing where if you're on any side, you'll be like, oh, this guy's on my side because he wants to do the good things. And so the first episode, the pilot episode, is called Open Government. And the whole reason that Jim Hacker and his party have gotten into power is that they are supposedly promoting a more open government. That is to say, more free handling of information, more information handed to the public, more acknowledgement of things that are going on that, would normally be, say, backroom deals, that kind of stuff. And so this whole episode is basically Jim Hacker learning that sometimes you just got to cover stuff up. And that's the lesson. Because they didn't want me to close my mouth. They wanted me to maintain the horror look forever. So, yeah. Jim Hacker gets into his office, and, we're introduced to two characters. And it's very important that there's two characters here, not just one. Because one character is Sir Humphrey Appleby? Applebottom?
Sir Humphrey Appleby.
Sir Humphrey okay.
Definitely not Sir Humphrey Applebottom.
Well, I was going to say, I said Appleby, and I was like, no, that's the restaurant. And so it must have been something else.
No, it's Sir Humphrey Appleby. Quick
Sir
fun
Humphrey
fact.
Appleby.
Sir Humphrey Appleby in this show is playing basically the incarnate version of the banality of evil. He is the civil service he is the civil servant who is there to be a civil servant and to just try and allow things to continue the way they are without too much disruption.
Right.
He is...
But always a constant movement towards larger budgets, more people working in the civil service, more luxury for members of the civil service,
the silver service,
etc. It's a giant snowball of crap that's rolling down a hill of crap and constantly growing larger, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it, which is the main idea of this whole show. You're doomed.
Yes, and this particular character, he's playing a... I don't want to say... Corrupt isn't the right word. I mean, he's obviously corrupt. He's there to make sure that everything stays corrupt. But he himself is not really doing anything corrupt. In fact, there's times where he tries to prevent the minister from doing things that may be interpreted as being corrupt.
Yeah.
He cares more about the civil service than whether or not he's actively being good or evil. And that's what makes his character what it is.
But his main weapon is usually the withholding of information.
Yes. Or the giving of information at the right time.
Yeah, there's that too.
But putting that aside,
he's very much kind of like the perfect evil bureaucrat. Like the perfect lawful evil bureaucrat.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. But I only bring him up real quick as a little bit of an anecdote.
Yeah.
He played a bureaucrat. The big bad bureaucrat dude that ends up getting offed by what's his name? Oh, I can't remember the actor's name, but in Demolition Man, he plays the bureaucrat that is behind bringing the frozen criminal dude back.
Oh my god, that's him?
Yes, that's him.
No way.
I watched that. I watched a couple of minutes from a scene from Demolition Man on YouTube recently, and that came up, and I was like, wait a minute, that's Sir Humphrey Appleby. And it was the last thing that was like his last acting job. I think there's like a thing in the credits that's like dedicated to Nigel Hawthorne or whatever his name was.
Yeah, Nigel Hawthorne is right. Wow, that's
he was essentially playing Sir Humphrey Appleby in this movie.
Just like future Sir Humphrey Appleby.
Yeah, we're all restaurants or Taco Bell.
I mean, just don't ask what all clothing stores are.
Yeah,
because it's TJ Maxx.
That's
Shudder.
That's totally not playing out.
So he plays the kind of perfect lawful evil bureaucrat, and then we have the hacker's private secretary, who's mostly just called Bernard, and
Bernard
he is
Woolley.
in a very Bernard Woolley, but he's usually just called Bernard. Sir Humphrey Appleby gets called Sir Humphrey Appleby very frequently. The Right Honorable Jim Hacker gets called the Right Honorable Jim Hacker pretty frequently, but Bernard Woolley is usually just Bernard because he's below both of them, and so like he's kind of there. You often see him sitting in the like the foreground or the background of the scene of a scene, just like taking notes or something like that. He doesn't have a lot of lines, but when he has lines, they're usually either designed to be like the punchline of the scene, or they are him trying to chart a course between Hacker and Appleby, because again, he's a civil servant too, but he's supposed to be a little bit more like personally attached to Jim Hacker, but at the same time, the person who's responsible for whether he continues to be attached to future ministers is Appleby, and so it's he's in a very very dangerous position, and often has to kind of like play one side against the other, or play one side with the other without the other side knowing, kind of thing. He often gets the like the intrigue positions in the stories, that each episode is basically a series of events that probably takes place over the course of about a week, that involves a few events that kind of come together in a funny way. And usually what happens is that Jim Hacker has some idealistic idea, and then it is thwarted by Sir Humphrey Appleby, and then Jim Hacker learns that it was good, that his idealism was thwarted. So yeah, that's
good for him.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, so it's important to point out, in terms of Bernard, he isn't quite the same as Humphrey Appleby. He actually does have a streak in him of, well, we should try to do the right thing. But what will happen continuously throughout the show is that he will approach Sir Humphrey Appleby and be like, well, aren't we supposed to be doing this? I mean, we're the servants of the minister, and this is what the minister wants. And then Sir Humphrey Appleby will have a long explanation on why it's not in the minister's interest to actually do what he wants in that moment.
Right.
And I think one of the better examples of this was when in the later show it was called this is Yes Minister, and later on it becomes Yes Prime Minister because Jim Hacker becomes the Prime Minister. And there's an episode where there's someone in the cabinet is upset over something that happened in a meeting, and Bernard approaches Sir Humphrey Appleby and says, well, it's not in the minutes because the minutes haven't been written yet. And Appleby is essentially telling him not to put it in the minutes then, and then it didn't happen. And he's having a bit of a conscience problem with this. And he's Sir Humphrey Appleby looks at his conscience as something of a luxury. He actually says, where did you acquire this taste for luxuries? When Bernard says that he doesn't actually like the idea of lying in the minutes.
Yeah.
And so Appleby explains to him that, well, it's not really lying because, what actually happened in the meeting. And he goes, oh, well, concerning this thing that happened, he says, the minister did agree that, how did he word it? He said he agreed that it was X, but the rest of the conversation was but it should be Y. Mm-hmm. But after Bernard says, well, the minister agreed with him that X, Appleby says, the minister agreed with him. That's what you put in the minutes. And he goes, how's your conscience now? And Bernard says, oh, better, thank you. So this is the kind of relationship those two have. And you can see as you watch the show that Bernard is he's on the side of the civil service for the most part. There's an episode where he tells the minister that the minister says, if there is a conflict of interest, whose side is the civil service on? And Bernard just straight up says, oh, the winning side.
Right.
So he does still have that. He's got a bit of Appleby and a bit of Hacker in him, but he's more concerned with the civil service side because he is a civil servant. So he's more than willing to occasionally help Hacker pull one over on Appleby, but he's also very much on top of what Hacker's doing so that he can keep Appleby informed. It's kind of like playing both sides of the fence, but it's not so much about him trying to be in a better position because of it. He's just doing the job, essentially.
Right. And the job gives him a lot of conflicting incentives, basically.
Yes, very much so.
So, yeah, that's... I'm just going to kind of mention the names of the episodes and kind of like give a 3-word summary so that we can know so that people can know what kind of issues are discussed here. Well, no, wait, before we do that, there's also one other character who is instrumental in this season only.
Yes.
That we haven't mentioned. And his name is Weisel?
Frank Weisel.
Frank Weisel, yeah.
Whom everyone keeps calling Weasel.
Political advisor. Yeah, everyone keeps calling him Weasel. Some people intentionally and some people unintentionally. But he is the political advisor to Jim Hacker. And he makes many appearances in the first season. And the end of the first season is them carting him off to... effectively packing him in a box and sending him off to Abu Dhabi to make a Garfield reference. And that kind of like shows that the civil service has won. And now we just have 2 more seasons of the civil service having kind of sort of won. And Jim Hacker kind of being along for the ride at that point. And of course, there's still conflicts and stuff like that. And Jim Hacker still has his idealistic streak behind him, but the real fly or mosquito buzzing around in the whole first season is Weisel, and then he's gone. And you're like, oh, that's how this is going.
Yeah, it's actually, from the very first pilot episode, it's great when Jim Hacker becomes the new minister and he's being brought to his office and they're all walking down the hallway. And he's in front with Bernard, and behind there's another civil servant who isn't really, I don't think he's in it past that episode. But he's walking with Frank Weisel, and as they're walking down the hallway, you just see him sort of take Frank by the arm and turn him down another hallway, and he just walks off with him. And then Jim Hacker turns around like, well, where did Frank go? And he's like, oh, he's being taken care of. Let's go to your office. And they're essentially trying to separate him from his advisor.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them trying to do that throughout this first season, but he does kind of show up to be a fly in the ointment frequently enough that he still manages to kind of stake out his claim as a separate character of importance in this season. It's funny because even he has kind of a two-facedness to him to a certain degree, because
Yes.
while he is often in favor of things that are that would probably genuinely be improvements, he also is the the devil on the shoulder when he starts talking about Jim Hacker pandering to voters. Then he starts to take up a little bit of that devil on the shoulder kind of position as well. So he'll be like, well, this was our platform. This is what we wanted to do. 1 minute, and then the next minute he'll be like, and it would also be good for these marginal seats, or it'll be really popular with the press, and there's a lot of him also trying to wrangle Jim Hacker into things that make him more popular as opposed to more good, right? So,
Right.
And the thing, of course, is that once he gives up the position of I'm trying to steer you toward the good thing, he also gives up the moral authority that Appleby is eager to pull Jim Hacker away from, right? Because once he says, "Oh, well, this will be good for votes," Appleby can say, "Oh, are we just going to talk about votes here, or are we going to, are we going to actually get business done?" And that's often one of the levers that Appleby uses on Hacker to get him to kind of move closer to his position, basically.
Yes, and
It's really brilliant, honestly. Like the interplay between these very few characters, especially since most of the action this is a comedy. It's a situational comedy, and so you might expect there to be one of a various set of types of jokes, setups, skits, whatever. But most of the comedy action is actually Jim Hacker and Humphrey Appleby talking to each other in a room with maybe Bernard there to give a quip every now and then of Bernard being overly literal about something. And so there's a lot of very, very, very well-crafted dialogue in this show that is
it's
sometimes
swordplay. It's swordplay.
It's swordplay, yeah. But not just to describe it, but to also to say it's brilliantly written, right? It is direct when it needs to be direct, and it is roundabout when it needs to be roundabout. And it can be extremely direct, or it can be extremely roundabout. And the writers are fantastic at coming up with ways to kind of beat around the bush, or to achieve whatever purpose they need. And almost always the result is very, very funny.
Well, let's look at a couple of the things that make the show what it is. Now the things that we see happen are things that would, if we were to look at them in reality, happening in government, which most of them do, but if we were to look at it through that scope, we would all be quite upset at the way things are handled. And
yes,
this show takes all of those things, and normally at this juncture, I would say something like it exaggerates them, but it does not exaggerate them. This is just what government is, and it does it in a way that is meant to show you the way that the characters are thrown into these situations and manipulate everything.
Yeah,
it is done with banality in a way that makes it funny. So the first episode, the pilot episode, is about Jim Hacker getting the position, and he comes in, he says he wants to make a clean sweep. They're going to start making economies everywhere. They're going to have open government, and Sir Humphrey Appleby is already there with he's got everything ready for the minister. He has filled out paperwork so that they can get a white paper going so that they can start making some of these economies. And Jim Hacker is thrown aback by this. He says, "Oh, you've already been working on this." It's like, "Yes, of course." And they start talking about his diary, and they're like, "Well, you're going to have to do this and this today and this tomorrow and this tomorrow and this after that." And he's like, "Well, wait a minute. I've got 3 meetings doing this with my constituency, yada, yada, yada." And Sir Humphrey Appleby fires back with, well, surely you don't want to be putting your party before country. And this is where you start to see where Appleby begins to manipulate his boss, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, having said that he wants to make the decisions, Jim Hacker is then presented with all of the work that the previous minister never finished. So what's happening here is they're inundating him with work so that he can't really have much of an effect on policy in terms of what he wants to get done. Because they're trying they're trying to hobble him. They want to take his administration and just make it sort of smooth over and operate just like everything has already operated before, only a little bit better for the civil, a little bit worse for, the world as it goes along. But essentially, to keep the civil service as the bureaucratic monstrosity as it is,
right,
with as little change as possible. And so, in the midst of this, they have to kind of come up with a plan. Sir Humphrey Appleby wants to bring the minister to heel. He doesn't want him gone. It takes forever to get the right kind of person in office that he can manipulate so easily. And he has a conversation with the undersecretary for the prime minister and with Bernard, where they're sitting around at a table talking about this open government initiative. Bernard says, well, we're calling it open government, so we're going to be open with it, right? And Sir Humphrey Appleby says, well, no, you just call it open government because then you deal with all the difficulties in the title, and then, you don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's the title is the only thing that has to be open government in his thinking. Everything inside doesn't have to be open at all. But the minister is very gung-ho about this. And since we don't want to do a plot synopsis, I guess I'll just say that Humphrey Appleby decides that he will sort of put a contract under the nose of Frank Weisel, who is the political advisor.
Yes.
And he will make sure that he receives this. He brings it to the attention of the minister, who will look at it and say, well, this is stuff being manufactured in America instead of here. We could manufacture this here and have jobs. We need to stop this. And everything that unfolds from there is sort of putting him in a position where he has gone against something that the prime minister is trying to get done. And so now Jim Hacker has to get chewed out by the prime minister, and everyone around him in the cabinet is upset. And then Sir Humphrey Appleby comes in at the end and kind of pretends he's defending him, like, well, we're all about open government. That's what we believe in. And it turns out that this could cause Jim Hacker to lose his position. And so he gets Jim Hacker to say, well, couldn't we maybe hush it up?
It's not just that, right? Because there's an additional masterstroke here, right? It's that Appleby knows that Appleby puts this thing in front of Hacker, knowing that the prime minister is doing this foreign junket in America very soon and needs good relations. And then at the same time, he also, quote unquote, forgets to rescind an order that things shouldn't go out to the press without approval from the PM. And so Hacker sends this thing to the press. It goes to the PM. The PM gets very angry. And then it turns out, and there's some very thick scare quotes there, that it hasn't gone to the press. And Appleby looks like a hero to Hacker because basically Appleby's mistake has kept it from the public. And so right at the point that Hacker's like, couldn't we hush it up? Appleby's like, well, there's nothing we can do. It's already gone out to the press. While also knowing that a moment later, someone's going to walk in and say, hey, Appleby, you never rescinded this order, so it's fine. And this is kind of how Appleby works. He will do things. He always has a further out, a wider web of things that he's looking at than anybody else. And so he always has an idea like, oh, well, this is going to affect this. And so if I, bring attention to this, then then that will drive things in this direction, and then I'll make sure that this doesn't actually go out, even though I'll pretend that it goes out or whatever. And so there's a lot of duplicity that he uses strategically, in addition to his wider view, which is mostly because of his position as a career bureaucrat. He knows all the ins and outs. He knows where all the information goes and who gets it. He has plenty of friends who are willing to, give him private information, specially, and he always takes advantage of any foothold that he can get to make himself seem like he's doing what Hacker asks while not doing what Hacker asks. It's incredibly brilliant the way that they write him. Just the fact that he's got this very wide perspective of everything, and he knows all the ins and outs, and so he becomes kind of like the last boss almost in a way where like where anything that happens, generally speaking, he's one step ahead, and so there's occasional points where he's not one step ahead, and those points are also good because they allow us to see when he gets kind of taken off balance, how he reacts to that. So we get a lot of really good Appleby stuff. Hacker is fun, but Appleby is despite being the lawful evil monster, is actually kind of the cream of the crop in the show. He's like the most interesting character as well.
Yeah, he's the most fun to watch in the show because he's always doing something that he himself does not consider underhanded, but is underhanded. Right.
Well, he considers it underhanded, perhaps, but he just doesn't really care.
Not all of it. Some of it he thinks is how the world should legitimately operate, and he does do things. Okay, so the way that he talks about the things that he does usually gives you a good idea of his perspective of things. I know that there's an episode where they're trying to remove Jim Hacker wants to remove subsidies from the arts. And he's talking about giving a subsidy to a football club in one of his constituencies. And Bernard says, well, why not? It seems like something that people would actually enjoy with subsidy instead of... I mean, nobody really goes to these operas and things other than civil servants. And Humphrey Appleby stands up and starts pacing around the room and says, Bernard, subsidy is for the arts. It's for the opera, it's for music. Channel 4, yada yada, things like that. He says a bunch of things that people laugh at in the audience. I'm not British, I don't know what all of them mean, but they do make a lot of jokes about Channel 4. And then he turns on Bernard and goes, it is not to be given to what the people want. If the people want it, they'll pay for it themselves, which is a very apt thing that he says.
Sure.
Honestly, from, the perspective of you and me specifically, which we won't get into that, but it's a very good point that he makes, that the government subsidizes these things all for things that people don't want rather than what they do, because it kind of points out that, sure, it sounds good that we have opera houses and all these things and all these cultural things that only exist now because government supports them. But when you think about it, if anyone actually wanted that, wouldn't they pay for it? And him being this underhanded person and having this particular viewpoint about things exists to demonstrate by reflection a better way of thinking, essentially. That's why his character is so interesting. It's like turning a hero inside out. So or something like that, like a reflection of a hero. Like the reflection is everything bad about the hero, and then the hero is everything good about the hero. Well, he's the reflection. Right.
While not being like nowadays the quote unquote anti-hero is a really common character trope, I guess. And this is not what Appleby is either. Like he's a totally different thing. And I think it's worth at least recognizing how clever and interesting of a character he actually is.
Well, it's a strange sitcom, too, because the British form of comedy, in most cases at that time period, was one of, you have characters that have big plans for something, and they always fail catastrophically in the end for the sake of comedy. Whereas in Yes, Minister, you can kind of look at that as Jim Hacker having big plans and good intentions and mostly failing at the end. There are a few episodes where he does come out on top, but he mostly fails. But if you look at all three of them as being main characters, Bernard, Appleby, and Hacker, you do have this character in Appleby who is definitely always coming out on top. with like one or two exceptions that happen throughout the series.
Yeah.
It makes it a much different show than a lot of the other comedy of the time, like Keeping Up Appearances. You had a woman that was always trying to be present herself as high society and always coming off as annoying and ending up miserable at the end of each episode.
Right.
You have Are You Being Served, where the staff would try to find ways to make good things happen, and they would always have bad things happen by the end of it.
Right. Right.
You have Faulty Towers, where Basil Fawlty would try to do something to improve his hotel or improve his lot in life, and it would always backfire, and he would always end up way worse off than when he started.
Yeah.
But in Yes Minister, you did have that with the minister, but not so much with Appleby, and he too is one of the main characters. So,
well, the thing is that when the minister, when Hacker succeeds, it's often because he's gone along with something that Appleby is in favor of as well.
Yes.
Like there's the 5th episode called The Writing on the Wall, where the whole episode is about, well, the government might close down the administrative affairs section, which would mean they'd all, Hacker would be back to just being a backbencher, and that all the civil servants would be transferred away, right?
It's appalling.
And so this is one of the few kinds, it is appalling. It's one of the few times where they have to work together. And of course, what they're working together to do is exactly opposed to what Hacker came into office to do in the first place, right? Like in the first episode, they mentioned that I think they have like 23,000 people working in that office, and like the number is absurd. But like if there's 23,000 people who are not actually doing any good, then if Hacker actually were as idealistic as he pretends to be, he'd be like, oh well, maybe this will be the thing. Maybe this will be the thing. I'll sacrifice a little position temporarily, and I'll be back, kind of thing, somewhere else. But no, they both unite, and they succeed in preventing the department from being closed down. There's also episodes where Hacker succeeds, but he succeeds by like leveraging his power in a way that you kind of like blanch at. Like the second episode, there's an official visit from a guy who's just succeeded in launching a coup against the previous government. And so, number one, everybody's rushing. And so, like, Hacker's like, no, we gotta do this now, we gotta do it now. And because, he doesn't get information that he needs before plotting out his plan, he ends up with this guy who he knows is an old friend of his, but also that means that this guy knows how to kind of push his buttons and get things out of him. And so, Hacker basically trades something that he shouldn't be able to trade for something that is of direct benefit to him remaining in his position. And it's just like, when Hacker succeeds, you like Hacker has the position of the idealistic guy who's like trying to actually make things better. And whenever he succeeds, it's because he makes things worse.
Yeah.
It's really quite like the phrase I used was soul pain. That you're like, oh cool, he won. Oh no, he won.
Right? Well, that episode in particular is great because it's one of the ones where Humphrey Appleby actually has a more moral position than Jim Hacker at the end of the episode. This
right.
guy in a country called Buranda, which I've never even bothered to look up if that was a real country or not. I do not know my African countries at all.
It's not.
But so this guy wins a coup. He basically a war. He overthrows the government. He becomes the leader of Buranda. And before that had happened, they were planning on having the old leader visit the Queen in Scotland so that they could discuss oil deals and maybe work out some contracts to get oil rigs built over there so they could have some oil for Europe essentially, or Britain. And it was Hacker's idea that instead of the Queen coming back from a trip to Scotland to meet the leader of Buranda, that they would in London. They would just have her meet him in Scotland, where likely these things would be built, and also, coincidentally, where there were 3 marginal constituencies where it would give them something to... They were going to have by-elections, essentially, where having this thing happen there would be
Well,
a
it
boon
would create
to
employment in those areas, and so
yeah, and so
it's
it
the
would be a
typical
boon to
trade-off.
his party and several other people that were several of the other ministers essentially got together to
Right,
make this happen. Like the minister for
right,
foreign affairs was with him on this. But then the coup
right,
happens, and they're like, "Well, we'll just get the leader from the coup." And Appleby is against it from the start. He's like, "Well, we don't even know if this. We haven't even recognized their government. We don't even know who this
right.
person is." They make some jokes about Idi Amin and
Yeah,
taking photos with the queen before they knew what he was all about. He's like, "This could happen again, and that would be an absolute nightmare. So we
right.
don't want this." And Jim Hacker's insisting upon it. He's like, "We will work all of that out." He actually, it's a great episode too, because he stands up at his desk when Appleby says that he might take liberties with the queen getting these photos taken and then turning out to be funded by Cuba or something.
Right,
And
right.
Hacker stands up and says, "The queen will cope. She always does." And you can actually hear the audience in that episode. Like a couple of people go, "Ooh," like you don't talk about the queen like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And what happens is, it turns out that Hacker went to school with the guy that took over the country. He was in the
Right.
London School of Economics with him. He refers to him as a firebrand economist
Right.
and a really clever guy. So this guy writes a speech that he's going to give when he meets the Queen, wherein he's telling the Irish and Scottish people to throw off the imperial yoke of
Yes. Yeah.
of England.
And so that's the thing that Hacker has to get rid of, basically.
Yeah, it's a
And
bargaining
the way that he
chip,
does that,
essentially.
yeah, it's a bargaining chip, and he knows that it's a bargaining chip. That's the worst part. He's like, yeah, this is a bargaining chip. He put that in there so that he has something to demand something from me from me, so that I can give that to him, and like the whole thing is basically Hacker has the authority to hand over a loan of some ridiculous number of pounds interest free to this guy, and yeah, it's just basically, I trade you $50 million or 50 million pounds of taxpayer money, and you take out these 3 sentences from your speech so I don't look bad. And it's like I mean, episode 1 was bad enough, and now episode 2, you're just like, ow, my soul, ow.
Yes, by the end of episode 2, there is a man saying he wants a $50 million loan to buy Britain's oil rigs to build in his country, and he wants it interest-free. And Appleby is telling the minister, if you assume 10% interest over the course of 10 years, he's essentially asking for $50 million for free. And on top of that, he wants the money to buy he wants to use our money to buy our oil rigs. And at the very end of it, Hacker...
To then sell us oil.
Yes, to sell them oil. At the end of it, Hacker kind of just... He essentially bribes Sir Humphrey Appleby by reminding him that he's up for something that I don't know what it means in Britain, but it's a KBE or something, some honor that they give civil servants.
Award, yeah.
And so he just sort of offhand mentions that, and then Appleby's like, okay, well, I guess, this I will have to do this then.
Yeah.
Because he likes his titles and his pieces of flair, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, yeah, this is
He's
this
very
is one of those shows that gets under your skin the more you watch it.
Yeah, he's very much got that aristocratic streak in him.
Yeah. He's got his friends at Whitehall, and they sit in their chairs and they play favorites with who gets drinks and who doesn't, There's one scene in one of the episodes where Humphrey is angry at Bernard about something, and he's sitting there with Bernard, and the guy comes by for drinks, for like drink orders, and he says, "Yes, I'll have this." And the guy says, "2?" And he says, "No, just me." Leaving Bernard kind of like with nothing, as he berates him for some, thing that he's doing, which, is probably trying to... I forget what the exact terms of the argument were, but it was basically, Bernard was doing something that was helpful to Jim Hacker, and, Appleby didn't want him to do that, so...
Yeah, and the clashing personalities are great, because at one point there is an episode where it's in Yes, Prime Minister, where they revoke Sir Humphrey's key to number 10, and this leaves Humphrey Appleby more flustered than anything else that happens in the entire series. He goes as far as climbing a window to get into the Prime Minister's office just to be able to speak with him.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's one of the rare times where Hacker gets the upper hand, and he essentially uses Appleby's key as a bargaining chip for something he wants done.
Yeah.
He cuts off all connection to himself other than through Bernard, which drives Sir Humphrey Appleby up a wall because he's Bernard's boss.
Well, the thing about Appleby is that he's also a very good orator. He's very good at being convincing and witty and persuasive and sounding good. He makes bad things sound good, and he makes good things sound bad. And he's always got rhetorical tricks and little turnarounds to make things go his way. And so him being unable to talk to someone directly is a major hit to his abilities, because it means that he has to send all of his messages through Bernard, and Bernard is known for not being particularly well spoken, right? He's the butt of a lot of jokes where he'll over literalize something that they're saying, or he'll come up with a pun, or he'll just kind of he'll repeat something that someone else says to kind of just underline how ridiculous it is when you actually think about it.
Yeah.
And taking someone whose main strength is in their rhetorical skills and making them
he's disarmed
work through. Yeah, he's totally disarmed, and so not only is it a dishonor, but it also means a greater loss of his authority than you might expect, because of course he's not actually part. Because if it were just that he were not there, then he'd be able to work through the rest of the bureaucracy in order to get them to kind of twist towards his direction. But having to being kneecapped to talk through this person who is not eloquent, is infuriating, right? So yeah, it's a really good little technique. I
think it looks more like that in the early part of the show, because Bernard has moments in the show where you question whether he's more intelligent than Appleby or not. He does have a few really good moments throughout the show.
In the first season, he's mostly there to take notes and to have a funny line. It's true that he often gets the funniest lines in the first season. For instance, they'll be talking and then he'll repeat something and it'll get a big laugh because of the timing and because of him underlining the silliness of what's just been said, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again,
there's that scene where Hacker is reading that he starts the episode reading off some kind of rule from a folder, and he goes, "What does it mean?" Because it's a word salad thing, and Bernard is just oh, well,
Bernard's response is to start reading it.
Yeah, he starts reading it again. He says it means, and then he just starts reading it, and Hacker's like, no, I just read it to you. What does it mean? And he goes, well, it means what it says.
Right.
Honestly, all three of those characters are absolutely great, because even Hacker, he's not as eloquent as the other two. He's almost certainly not as intelligent, but every once in a while he sees something from the politician's viewpoint that they don't see, and every once in a while that gives him an edge over the civil service. Right. So it is really swordplay on the level of when you're reading Umineko and the logic games that the characters are playing with each other are presented as swordplay in metaphor. That is what happens in this show. Everything is swordplay, and each little battle has its own set of techniques that's being employed. And it's probably it's done to such a level that you can look at Sir Humphrey Appleby as a criminal mastermind that is above and beyond any mafioso or anyone on the hard streets of Los Angeles. I would put
him on the level of a Moriarty or something like that.
Oh yeah, I would put him above Moriarty.
Way up there. Yeah.
I don't think
just because of the realism involved in what he's saying.
I don't think Sherlock Holmes would have stood a chance against Sir Humphrey Appleby.
Oh man. But at the same time, you get to see all of the backroom deals and all of the all of the like the give and take system of like appointments for favors. The last episode of the season is all about quangos, whatever, and like it's basically like a position where like it's up to the minister to decide who gets this position, and the position has some authority, but basically these positions are sold off to people for other favors and other things.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is just so like it'd be better if it was less realistic.
Yeah, it would be much less soul pain, but I do like that episode.
Yeah, it's really good. It's extremely good.
Well, I love that it's the whole point of the episode is for them to get rid of Frank Weisel.
Well, it's not just that. Frank Weisel gets rid of himself.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
the final fig leaf or the final bite of the apple, so to speak. Like
the
Weisel
end of all the moral upstanding. Where he's the one that's talking about people shouldn't be corrupt. He's getting angry at the prime minister or at the minister, at Jim Hacker, for being corrupt when they're supposed to be working together to end corruption. And at the end of the episode, he is corrupted. Easily.
Well, it's not just that he's corrupted; it's that they do it so easily. Yeah, like they're like, you'll have to go all around the world to find this stuff out, and he's like, well, I don't know.
And they name all these nice places that he'll have to go.
And they're like, yeah, you have to go here, and then they also say, and there'll be luxurious digs, of course, but you'll have to go to all these places, and then finally he's corrupted, and he's like, all right, well, I'm gone, and it's like. It's not just that he plays along with their facade because he's like, well, it's going to be terribly difficult work, but somebody's got to do it, and I can really make a difference doing all this. And it's like you're just going for the perks. We know you're going for the perks, but you're the audience knowing that, whereas nobody else on the screen is acknowledging that. Right, and that's part of what makes this series so insidious is that you in the audience will be like, no, don't do that, and nobody in the actual show even acknowledges as this giant elephant in the room that you're like, no, hold on a minute. It's really it's one of those shows that generates a massive amount of ambivalence, and because it is able to do so, it is infinitely more memorable by that aspect of itself.
It is a show with no good guys, with maybe the possible exception of Jim Hacker's wife. But other than that, like nobody in the show. Well,
no, but even she in the Economy Drive episode, when he's like, "Yeah, we've slimmed down our stuff." She's like, "Well, the whole point of you getting up here was to get all this stuff that you could, do your work more efficiently with and be more comfortable with." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess that's kind of true." But we got to do it anyway because Appleby convinced me that this is the way to go, kind of thing.
Well, he specifically says this will bring me more power in the end,
in the long run.
But yeah, she's the closest that we have to a good guy in the show. Everyone in the show is they're all the bad guy, but they're all backstabbing each other and manipulating each other, and so it makes for a good and very intelligently written comedy. And if you want to do political intrigue, it's probably a masterclass in some of the ways that you can have your characters manipulating one another.
Yeah, because a lot of people fall into the, evil mastermind who kills his subordinate whenever they fail kind of trope, or something along those lines. And this is, if you study Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, you will learn how to do so much better than that.
Other than that, I mean, I always recommend the show for anyone who wants some intelligently written dialogue. It's a
fantastic show. It's incredibly well-written dialogue and incredibly well thought out, like, plans and plots of the characters. And there's always irony and like, things are foreshadowed like very, very well. And it's just a masterclass. And, if you want to ever do political writing, you got to go take a look at Yes Minister. Especially if you want to talk about like how bureaucracies work, because this is this is the show that makes me want to go grab my copy of Mises Bureaucracy and like clutch it while I watch it.
And Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister are essentially the same show. They're the same characters. The only difference is in Yes Prime Minister, all three of those main characters, Bernard, Sir Humphrey Appleby, and Jim Hacker, all have more power.
Right.
So it really is a fantastic run. The whole thing. And there was even a Christmas special, which was the most corrupt one of all of them, because it's all about Jim Hacker weaseling his way into getting elected as prime minister.
Right.
Like it's the transition from the show being called Yes Minister to Yes Prime Minister was that Christmas special. And everyone in it is backstabbing everybody else.
There's also a short 2-minute skit that was there was a show in 1982, I think, where they had like all their most popular TV shows come in and do like a 2-minute skit. And there's a 2-minute Christmas skit for this that is also really, really funny that you can like find it on YouTube and stuff.
Oh, there's also Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of Britain. She loved the show so much that she actually appeared in a 2-minute skit with what's his name, Eddington. I forget what Jim Hacker's real first name is, but
Paul Eddington?
Paul Eddington and Nigel Hawthorne, who plays Sir Humphrey Appleby. They sat down with her with scripts in front of a camera that she had written, and it was kind of making fun of economists. And they played it out as though Jim Hacker was a minister under Margaret Thatcher, and it was just like a 2-minute skit. But it was pretty cool, and they even did the opening for the show is the weirdest opening because everyone is drawn with gigantic noses.
Well, it's like it's not just noses, right? Because like the Hacker caricature also has these monstrous like fang teeth, like.
Well, I mean, his teeth are kind of like that in real life. I mean, the second episode of Yes Prime Minister is essentially making fun of him for 3 minutes about his teeth.
Oh.
They ask him to smile because he's going to be delivering a speech as the new prime minister, and he smiles, and like 3 people are just looking at him, and they all turn around in horror and start whispering to one another.
I see. I'll have to catch up on that.
Yeah, it's
a fantastic show.
Yeah, fully recommended.
And you should watch it. Fully recommended, 100%. Good dialogue, good characters, good planning, good irony, good, like, just everything. And then it also comes with a heaping helping of deep, deep soul pain.
Yeah, it's the introduction I gave about the perpendicular pronoun was one of my favorite things that Humphrey Appleby ever said. He got into a spot of trouble, and it turned out that they discovered that he was responsible for something a long, long time ago that cost a lot of money and a lot of people their jobs and a whole bunch of political upset. And when the minister finally calls him out on it, and the minister has figured out that it was him, but he hasn't told him that yet. And so finally he's like, we're going to do an investigation and figure out who this was. And Sir Humphrey Appleby practically breaks down in tears, but because he's always saying things in this word salad manner, he starts explaining himself by when the minister asks who it was. Appleby says, I'm afraid the person in question is someone whom your current interlocutor is in the habit of describing using the perpendicular pronoun, which would be the letter I. And the Hacker's just like, what? Which is a running joke in the show. Every once in a while, Appleby will do something, we'll just spout something out like that, and Hacker will sit there for a second and just go, what? And then he says, it was I, Minister. It was I.
I see.
Oh, but there's so many good lines in every episode, just for the sheer entertainment. Not even as a writing experiment or anything. For the sheer entertainment value of the way these things are written, for the quotes alone, it's worth watching this show.
All right. Well, I guess we'll call that an episode. And if you've made it all this way to the end, you go look up Yes Minister. It can be found all over the internet, and you can watch it without having to pay a cent. Except for your, monthly internet, payment.
And the soul pain.
Which and the soul pain. Plus, you can avoid the internet payment if if your neighbor has no password on their Wi-Fi. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I actually have the DVD collection. That's how much I love the show.
Yeah, I have the DVD collection for Yes Minister, but not Yes Prime Minister. It's tough because they were, of course, so much more popular in Britain that if you try to buy DVDs of them, you'll often find them to be in the British region, and so you got to make sure you buy the right ones if you buy them. But anyway, that will do it for this week. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I am that interlocutor yet again, Justin.
And we are, I don't know. I was trying to think of some good word salad to end the episode on, but I just got nothing.
Well, we're the wordy pair. That's not really word salad, but I mean, it implies a forthcoming word salad at some point.
I suppose that's true. All right, everybody. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's at Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, at Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.